Shannon, thank you for having me in your beautiful home.
Thank you for visiting, Robbie.
Where are we right now?
So we're a mile west of Two Hills, the town of Two Hills.
What are some of the challenges in your riding that you'd like to see fixed and changed?
I was thinking back to the first time I ran in 2015. The main thing that was at stake back then, which is why the current situation is so frustrating and infuriating, is that energy was part of that campaign. And I ran to represent this riding because I'm proud of the people, the families, the businesses here, and the key drivers of these communities are oil and gas and agriculture. And this is a place where the farmers work in the oil patch to be able to sustain their farm, to feed their neighbors, while they also provide the most responsible energy in the world. So for me, the job losses, the business losses that have already happened over the last 10 years, and the risk of even more if the bad policy agenda continues to be imposed on us, that's what keeps me up at night. That's what drives me. This isn't for me, this is not a statistical thing. It's not I read the heads of the Financial Post and know what to say on on any given day. These are my neighbors, my relatives, our local communities, the people who've given me the job to fight for them. It's real to me.
I really wish this country would spend more time trying to think of how we could develop our country. Like this woke agenda for the past 10 years, I'll give them credit on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I think we all admit that pipeline was needed. It was way too expensive, way over budget. But simultaneously, it's almost like Trudeau had this weird kind of passive-aggressive, flip-floppy response, because he was making statements like, we need to phase out the fossil fuel industry. We need to get rid of the oil sands. He put a tanker ban.
This is what blew my mind. For those people who supported the tanker ban, if they believe that there's an irreparable, unmitigatable risk to the marine ecology in the area, I think it was the duty of the NDP and the Green Party to come out and say, well, this isn't actually what the Liberals are saying it is. But they didn't. That C-48 did not give any teeth to that voluntary exclusion zone, and it didn't fully ban marine traffic from the area, but its objective was clear, because what it did ban was the on and offloading of crude and persistent oils off that port, and tankers of a certain size, capacity, and volume, which would be the super tankers that would be able to go direct route to Asia. I realized that everything from everybody, a cross-section of media, politicians, and policymakers, they bought this mythology and this narrative that all Indigenous people and communities are mostly against oil and gas or mostly against pipelines, which was never true.
Not even close.
This was a myth that was harmful to Indigenous people and to our whole country. I took it on myself just to play a small but whatever role I could to help amplify and elevate those voices and those leaders and those private sector proponents who have built the energy sector and who have stood up and pushed back against that narrative.
Trudeau had an opportunity to put Canada on the map. We could have had the Energy's pipeline. We couldn't have had Keystone because Biden canceled that, but we could have had the Northern Gateway. And I think there's talk about doubling the Trans Mountain. If you did that, we could provide this entire world with good, ethically sourced, clean oil and gas from Canada.
Yes.
And
we would be self-sufficient.
Yes.
Which would make us strong and not vulnerable to any external threats. There's no excuse for this. People are really worried right now because of what's going on in the United States. Yeah. But my view is what Canadians really have to focus on is what Canadians can control. And the first priority I believe that Canadians need to keep top of mind when they go to the ballot box is we are in this position because of our own federal government.
Yes.
Our vulnerability as a people, the vulnerability to our economy overall, the vulnerability to businesses and to all of these communities. All of this is both a direct and existential threat to our lives and livelihoods. And the reality is that the situation we're in was completely self-inflicted by that radical anti-energy, anti-development, frankly anti-Canadian agenda that every single other party in the House of Commons has been part of imposing.
How can industry say, look, we'll always care about the environment, we'll always try to do better, we'll always take feedback, but enough is enough. We're a business that supports this country. That is the reason we have such a great life.
One of the things that was so frustrating during the debates on Energy East, first of all, the rural-urban divide, exactly as you've pointed out before, where the resources are developed and the work is happening and people know the impacts best and they know the truth. And so you see that gap between the rural people being able to say how it really is and then, urban people who just by nature of not living with this development in their backyard or side by side don't necessarily see that reality themselves and don't automatically know the connection between the oil and gas sector, which still to this very moment, despite 10 years of the government trying to keep them in the ground, is Canada's largest private sector investor in the economy and Canada's largest export. So I spend a lot of time in the communities here in Lakeland to people who are all involved in natural gas or heavy oil or oil sands development in some way or another, saying to them, I wish that you could really talk to the people, your fellow citizens, because I hear from a lot of my constituents and Albertans that they're starting to feel because of the outcome of the last a couple of elections or also this anti-energy, anti-Canada, anti-development agenda, that their fellow Canadians, hate them or dislike them or are ashamed of them. But the people, not the noisy politicians, not the media, not the various activist groups who are all colluding on this agenda and vested in perpetuating these myths that are not true. The actual people, they wanted the pipeline and they want the jobs and they see the value and they're personally connected to the people who are here. The damage that this Liberal government and all of their backers in the other parties have done to national unity and to the perceptions of Canadians of each other, that's unforgivable.
If we had an honest approach about energy and looked at how we can collectively make the world cleaner and better, and I also think it has a lot to do with how you approach it. Haiti and the Dominican Republic, they're touching. One side, if you go to look at their rivers and their lakes, is plastic. A lot of plastic pollution in the world it's coming from places like that. The side that has more money and understands how to deal with waste, theirs is clean.
Yes, because we as Albertans know that being able to make money and driving this profit makes the money to be able to put into environmental stewardship and innovation and technology, which helps lower emissions and helps increase clean water and lower water use and all of those things. We know that because we live here and we see it all around us.
What is your message to the Canadian oil and gas workers about their future?
Be proud and be hopeful, and if Canadians elect a common sense conservative government, know that you will have a government that is proud of what you do, that values what you do, that backs your way of life, that appreciates what you do, that's proud of you. So we all have to band together and we have to fight for what's right and fight for our best interests as Canadians and for our whole country. And that is to expand oil and gas production and exports so we can be self-sufficient, we can be energy and food secure, and we can play the powerful leadership role that all Canadians can and should be able to play, which is providing environmentally and socially responsible oil and gas as the essentials of human life to people all around the world while helping lower global emissions.